What is up, everybody? This is One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. I'm your host, Michael Egan, joined alongside by Nick Fada. Alex Wolves is our producer behind the proverbial glass. We're taking you all the way up to 10 o'clock on this Wednesday night, streaming live on YouTube and Twitter. So much to get into this evening. A wild NBA free agency period with some notable moves by both the Knicks and Nets. We also got some news, some things brewing, with the Mets and Yankees. On a related note, we're also going to be joined later by our Yankees beat reporter Ryan Gregware, live from Yankee Stadium. Before we get into any of that, the basketball, the baseball, just so much to get into. Nick, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Mike. As always, I'm happy to be here. Love talking. I think NBA free agency might be my favorite and easily the most exciting free agency period in all sports. And there's just so much that's happened in these past couple of days. That's a huge part of our show tonight. I'm looking forward to getting to that. Yankees Mets is always good too, so I'm happy to be here and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it right off the top there with the Knicks, and you're a Knicks fan, I'm a Knicks fan, and I think that's probably the most notable news that we're bringing in tonight, especially for our local friends, the local market. And I think the biggest thing, the Knicks have made some moves, but I think the biggest one is Kemba Walker. And we're going to get more into this later in the show, obviously, but I think that this is just a win-win for the Knicks right here. You're getting him on a cheap deal. We'll get more into the specifics later, but you're getting him relatively cheap. He's an upgrade over Elfrid Payton. Of course, you're also bringing back Derrick Rose. That combination at point guard. Rose probably coming off the bench. I just think overall it's a great move, and I think it's really going to help the Knicks out.
Yeah, Kemba is, I think, meant to be in Madison Square Garden. He was born in the Bronx, New York, of course. He played, obviously, Charlotte, bounced to Boston, OKC trade, buy him out. Happy to have him. I think it's going to be a great addition for the Knicks. As long as, the price isn't too hefty, he's not exactly the 25-point scorer that he was a few years past. I could be wrong, though. I hope I'm wrong. As a fan, I hope he kind of regains that stardom that he had, and I think the Mecca is the greatest place to do it. I think he wants to be here. I think he bought out to come here. I think he's meant to be here, and not only that, he comes with Evan Fournier, who was his teammate in Boston. Those guys have some continuity coming over to New York now. I think it's going to be a great pairing and much-needed offense for this New York team, which was really the biggest burden on them in the playoffs. They couldn't score. So now you have two guys that know how to put the ball in the basket, very high rate, great offensive players. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, and you mentioned offense, and I don't think you can mention, one of the other moves is Evan Fournier, of course, who, not a super, sexy name, you could say. Not a big splash. He's not Duncan Robinson exactly in terms of shooting, but, this is a solid shooter who's going to help the Knicks from three, but that's just another one of the big moves. Again, we're going to get to all of this later on in the show, of course, but looking bigger at the bigger picture, let's say, with NBA free agency, you had the Bulls going out and getting Lonzo Ball. You had them also getting Alex Caruso, a sign and trade with DeMar DeRozan. The Lakers, bringing in an entire old age home, let's call it. With all of these veteran guys. Melo, obviously the trade for Russ happened later last week. Just so much going on with them. Also bringing Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard coming back, of course. And then the Heat, bringing in Kyle Lowry. Obviously, they already had Jimmy Butler, re-signing Duncan Robinson, like I talked about. And then also just so many big contract extensions. Trae Young, Curry. CP3 getting a new deal with the Suns. Of all that wider kind of NBA news, which of anything stands out to you right now?
I guess the biggest, name to go would be potentially Kyle Lowry to the Heat. Those guys have revamped. They've picked up PJ Tucker. They picked up Kyle Lowry. Jimmy Butler re-signed. Duncan Robinson re-signed. I didn't realize the Heat had that much money. But I guess, they've been saving and they're hoping they were in the finals, not this past season, of course, but the year before. I think they still think they have a chance to make it back there. The East is real competitive now. I don't want to hear any more slander from people saying the East is weak. It's a fantastic, just the NBA as a whole now is just so talented, but I think the Heat could have a chance to get back there because they've got a lot of guys now who are just really grit and grind players. They're built, I think, for the toughness and physicality of the playoffs. Lowry's been there, Jimmy's been there, PJ Tucker's been there clearly as he just won. I think Bam Adebayo's only going to get better. This team has the pieces, to go and do things. I don't really know what the problem was last year where they fell apart. I know they had some COVID issues, but I think Kyle Lowry going there is really the biggest piece because it's another NBA champion being added to that team. A former All-Star. I don't know if he's necessarily an All-Star anymore, but he still plays at a high level, and he's just ready to go, I think, down there. Him and Jimmy Butler have fantastic chemistry, and I think South Beach could be a pretty good threat this year in the East.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get into that later too when we talk about our NBA free agency. I mean, I'd love to hear what you have to say about, where do we see the team stacking up in the East? Where do we see them stacking up in the West? And then, of course, one of the other things that we're going to get into besides our NBA talk, of course, is some baseball. We're talking Yankees. We're talking Mets. I know you're a Yankees guy. You got your Yankees jersey on right now. What stands out for you right now with the Yankees post-trade deadline?
I mean, they've been winning. That first game against the Orioles was tough. They bounced back last night. They've been winning since the All-Star break. They've been winning since the trades. I'm pretty content right now. I'm just hoping they can kind of ride the momentum. I've said this before so many times on the show, but I think they can string together not necessarily a 10-game win streak, but just series wins. 2 games out of 3, 3 games out of 4. They can do that. That gives them the chance to get in the playoffs. That's winning games is what they have to do. There's no secret. So if they can kind of string together that momentum to win the series, each series after each series, I think they'll be set. And hopefully all goes well there in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you're a big passionate Yankee fan. For me, anyone who knows me, anyone who's ever watched me on whether it's the Saturday show, the Wednesday show, wherever you've seen me or my tweets, whatever, I'm a diehard Mets fan. So of course we got to talk about the Kumar Rocker situation. We're going to dive into a lot of that coming up. Just more baseball talk later on in the show. But after the break, we're going to be talking about Knicks, Nets. You're watching One-on-One on YouTube and Twitter. Welcome back to One-on-One and New York's longest running sports call and show. I am here with Nick Feta, hanging out with you on this Wednesday night. Thanks for bearing with us with the break. Of course, right now, we're going to get into some local NBA free agency talk, some local moves that were happening with the Knicks and the Nets. Off the top, we mentioned some of the Knicks. We'll get more into the Nets a little bit in this segment as well. But of course, look, I'll be honest, not many people in this town really care about the Nets. I know our producer, Alex Walls, might beg to differ, but I think we've got to focus on the Knicks here right at the top. And, it's not even just the signings that they got. It's not even just Fournier and Kemba. We got to look at the guys that they brought back and honestly the guys they let go. But let's start off with Kemba, who, we mentioned right off the top of the show. Obviously, earlier this morning, it was kind of a surprise move, to be honest. I really didn't see it coming. Got bought out of his deal with OKC, of course, back in June. Kemba was traded to the Thunder along with a couple picks, and then Al Horford went back to Boston. So after the buyout, Kemba will be coming to the Knicks. It looks like it's going to be for 2 years between the $16 and $18 million range. I think that's a pretty reasonable deal. Of course, we talked about it off the top as well. Kemba's a local guy, grew up in the Bronx, played at Rice High School in Harlem. Infamous for his time at UConn, the Big East tournament, 2011, that famous shot. That's where the whole cardiac Kemba thing started. So Nick, I mean, you mentioned it a little before in the intro, but let's kind of dive into it here. Your thoughts right off the top about the Kemba deal, the potential money situation, and how you see him fitting in with this team.
Yeah, so I'll start quickly with the money. If the deal is true, what you just said, I think that's perfect. He's going to need some money, of course. He is a relatively big name. Definitely not max contract worthy, of course, but that money is good. I like the length of the contract, too. It doesn't really lock you down into anything with him. 2 years, I can't imagine they'll get rid of him in the next 2 years, but I think it's an easy, secure sort of contract for him to have. As far as his productivity, I think the most simple way to say it is I saw a tweet saying, Knicks fans, if you are not happy right now, you're just a miserable person. You went from Elfrid Payton, and we talked a little bit before the show. You went from Elfrid Payton as your starting point guard to now Kemba Walker. a major upgrade in every way, shape, or form. Elfrid Payton in the playoffs didn't even get time because he couldn't contribute.
I think a mop with a bucket for a head would be an upgrade over Elfrid Payton right now. So I'm very happy with it.
So I again, I don't necessarily mean to slander Elfrid Payton, but he's just not.
I do. I don't care. I mean, I'll do it. You want to do it, I will.
I think he's just not good enough to be a starting point guard. The Knicks arguably had the worst starting point guard in the league last season. And then they started Rose in the playoffs, but I personally don't like Derrick Rose starting. I want him on the bench. He's a sixth man of the year candidate, I think, every year for the next couple of years if he stays on the bench and he's healthy. And, Kemba and him now rotating as the starting one and the bench one, I think is just fantastic because it's scoring threats at that point guard position no matter what. There's always someone in at the point that you not only have to worry about distributing and facilitating an offense, but scoring the basketball as well. With Peyton, that was not it. So I think Kemba's just, I'm fingers crossed. He averaged 25.6 points a game in 2018-19 with the Hornets. And then he went to Boston. This past season, he averaged 19.3. So a little bit of a down in scoring, obviously. But he was also hurt. He had some knee issues. Knock on wood again, fingers crossed. None of that happens. You're hoping for the best for any player in the league. But obviously in New York now, I think Kemba can be just so great. In the spotlight here, as we said, the Cardiac Kemba name comes from him being in Madison Square Garden with that shot. Hopefully we can see some shots like that. And I think really, too, he's also another great leader, a leader in that locker room, a great leadership type of presence. And pair him with Tom Thibodeau, Tibbs gets every single ounce of every player, gets everything out of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, definitely.
Kemba's not a spectacular defender. I think that's no secret. Who knows? Maybe he becomes better under Coach Tibbs. You have no idea, but he gets the full potential out of each player because that's what we saw last season with this Knicks team, who no one thought was going to make the playoffs. And now there's a lot more talent. Kemba, Fournier, which we'll talk about. I think it's just great for these guys to have him. He's just not necessarily a perfect fit. I mean, there's no perfect fit besides some, you put LeBron on a team or something. But he's just a great fit for this team in I think, every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, I mean, look, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's not much more I can add. I think it's a pretty good signing, especially given the low risk factor with the money and the Elfrid Payton replacement. We kind of both talked about that, but now I kind of want to talk about a little bit of the negative side, which is some of the concerns that I have with this deal. Money wise, I'm not concerned. We were talking pre-show a little bit. The old Knicks, what they would have done was they would have traded for this old contract before the buyout. Yep. They would have been saddled with that $74 million that was left. That's the previous. That's like I don't know. I'm just gonna say Phil Jackson, but I know he really wasn't big into that kind of stuff. But that's the first name that comes to mind. Just like a Dolan taking too much power move, I guess would be the better example. But here are my concerns about Kemba, and I'll be honest. You mentioned it, the knee injury. I mean, he played only 43 of 72 games last year at Boston. That's concerning. He missed 2 playoff games in that final series with Brooklyn. Obviously it wasn't a very close series, but that obviously is a concern as well. And he's 31 years old. And you mentioned Tibbs, like the leadership, which is great as well. But maybe that relationship, Tibbs like leadership, I get that. But my concern is, Tibbs is known, his guys, they play, the starters, they play. He rides those minutes up. Julius Randle got ridden into the ground, whether that had anything to do with, his poor playoff performance, who knows? But my concern is with a guy like Kemba, who is older now, who has had some knee issues now. Is Tibbs going to be able to treat him with the right gloves? And when you look at it from this point of view as well, you have Kemba, he's going to be your starter. And I think, like you said, Derrick Rose is best off the bench. But then you got your top 2 point guards are guys that are older. And I mean, not Kemba, not so much, but guys with knee issues and, basketball and knees. I mean, those are those are the things you got to take care of. So, my concern is as a Knicks fan and just as a basketball fan is like, I think this move is good for the Knicks. You got a guy, and you said it, who can create shots, who is going to take some of the load off of Julius Randle, help with the offensive production. But my concern is, what is going to happen now with the injury? Are we going to be able to get some minutes? And then let's say Rose is hurt. Let's say Kemba's hurt. What happens? You're going to be relying on quickly in year 2 and, a rookie in McBride. Is that really the best combination?
So I think I've got a perfect counter for that, and it's what the Knicks would do oftentimes last season. I think year 2 quickly hopefully does make a big jump, as you hope for any year 2 type of player. However, he's not necessarily. I would see him more at the 2. I don't see him really as a on-ball point guard. I think he's a 2 guard. What we do have for the Knicks in the backcourt is Alec Burks re-signed. He would take some minutes at point guard, and he was very stable there. Not necessarily a fantastic facilitator, but he was a very good, just controlled the pace. I don't necessarily love him there because I want him shooting the ball. That's really why the Knicks have him. But he's locked down. I believe it was 3 years, $30 million they re-signed him for, maybe 32. But he can take that role as well. I think maybe the Knicks do some sort of approach where if Kemba can't handle those minutes, they do something like what they did with Peyton, where he starts and plays the first 6 minutes. Rose comes in and plays the next 12. Then Kemba comes back, plays the next 8. They balance it in some way like that. I share your concerns like that because Tibbs does, he wants the most out of his guys. You'd see Randall and Barrett playing 46, 47 minutes in some games that really weren't even that important, I guess, to the next season. So you do worry in that sense, but I'm hoping, the guys, this team is basically the same plus a few pieces. So I'm hoping, the mold and that chemistry and the toughness and bond between these guys should be able to, fill the shoes where someone may not be. Hopefully that won't have to happen, of course, but if it does, I think the Knicks have the guys suitable enough to be able to step up.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, real quick, I almost said Trey McBride, the journeyman NFL receiver, Miles McBride. So just a quick correction on my part, Miles McBride, who they drafted out of West Virginia, obviously. But you mentioned it as well a little bit here. They're bringing a lot of these guys back. I mean, they brought back Alec Burks, who I think, at times was big for them in the playoffs. At other times kind of struggled for them. 3 years, $30 million. They're bringing back Nerlens Noel, a lockdown defender, a great hustle guy who I love on the team. And you're bringing back Derrick Rose, who obviously already talked about. And, of course, Mitch Robinson, hopefully he's healthy this year. That's also a big key. I mean, what you're hoping is you basically have the same core. This is the core that got you the 4 seed, that got you this great regular season. The question is now, can Fournier, who, what more else can we say then? He's here for shooting. He's going to help with 3-point shooting, all that stuff. You're hoping that Fournier and Kemba can elevate this team a little bit. I don't really know how much more you can expect out of it. I think, like you said on the top of the show, the East is stacked. So I don't really know how much of a higher seat you can expect. Maybe we get to the trade deadline and there's a big trade coming and we add to this core that we have now. I don't know. But look, I think overall, if you're a Knicks fan, you have to be pretty happy with the way that the offseason has gone so far. And, I think you can't knock bringing in 2 guys who were total upgrades over what you had. I think if you're a Knicks fan, you have to be pretty happy. And then on the flip side, we go over to one of the other boroughs and we go over to Brooklyn and we look at what they've done in NBA free agency so far. Of course, not much, not a whole lot, but when you have the big 3 of Kyrie, KD, and James Harden, there's not much you really have to do. So, of course, the biggest one, Patty Mills, point guard from San Antonio, 2 years, $12 million. I mean, veteran guy, part of a winning organization. He has that connection to Sean Marks, the Nets' current GM, who, of course, grew up in the San Antonio organization. This is a guy, hey, look, when you had Kyrie, struggling with his mental health or injuries and he was out, this is the guy that can be your backup point guard. He can start for you in a spot if you need to. It's a solid move. And, of course, also they brought back Blake Griffin on a 1-year deal. But they also, and we'll get into this as well. First, I want to hear your thoughts on the signing. They lost Spencer Dinwiddie, who, of course, was out all last year. But, prior to that had been a big piece of the Brooklyn turnaround. So, I know obviously you're a Knicks fan. I'm a Knicks fan. But, of course, we got to give, even though I don't think they make up a huge percentage of the market, but we got to give our fair share to the Nets fan as well. So your thoughts on some of the initial moves in Nets free agency?
Yeah, Brooklyn's been relatively quiet. There's no doubt about that. I think Patty Mills is a great pickup. He's a winner. And that's what not necessarily Brooklyn needs more of. They have the guys who have won, but coming from the Spurs, playing with just he was on those teams where it was Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, some of my favorite teams of all time. But, he's a winner. He definitely will contribute as off the bench. And like you said, if he needs to start, he can definitely step up. I think losing Dinwiddie is definitely a mistake, I want to say, and here's why. I think because now he's going to be one of those guys. I could be totally wrong, but I don't think I will be. He's going to be one of those guys that now he's in Washington. There's not much talent there. It's Bradley Beal, and that's about it. He's going to go to Washington if he's healthy, and he's going to have a fantastic season. And to think if Brooklyn had him as well, who knows? It could have been. They could have been a stronger team. The backcourt presence, which is something they lack. If you have Harden injured or Kyrie injured, so Patty Mills of course helps. But then you got to put Bruce Brown in. I don't necessarily think he's as reliable as Dinwiddie would have been. The Nets team. Of course they're definitely stacked. As I've said before, my prediction was wrong. I thought they were winning easily, no doubt. Maybe if they weren't injured, I would have been right, but I don't think they needed to necessarily do as much, and I think that's why they've been fairly quiet. But I think letting Dinwiddie get away might not have been in their best interest because you haven't seen him play with this star-studded squad you have. He could almost be like the Iguodala type of player, not the same player, but the type of role where he's not necessarily one of the big three, but he's that guy who's always there and is good when you need him.
So wait, are you telling me that if Spencer Dinwiddie was still on this team and the Martians pointed the death beam at Earth, you want Spencer Dinwiddie taking a shot over
Dinwiddie?
No.
Yeah.
I think the point to make from this, though, I think it's important to say is that you got to think about luxury tax, though, with this kind of stuff. And
exactly.
Like the Nets, when you're paying KD all that money, Kyrie, Harden, like it's hard to keep a guy like Dinwiddie who's going to go and make a lot of money in a league where money is thrown around like it's, I don't know, like just anything. Like it's a common commodity. I mean, in NBA more than any other sport, you see these ludicrous contracts. So, I'm not shocked that he went away. I think he's a solid piece for the Nets, but we also got to keep this in mind. The Nets, had it not been for injuries, I think they probably had a good shot of winning that series with the Bucks. I mean, look, I'm not a Nets fan. I'm happy that Giannis ended up going on and winning the title and all that. But I would have loved to. I said it on one-on-one. I was on one-on-one like right before that Nets Bucks series, and I said like, I just don't see them shutting down that big three for 4 games, and they didn't really have to because of all the injuries. Harden was never 100%. Kyrie was out, and it was just really KD. Yep. So. I don't really think Dinwiddie is like, it's not like, oh, now they're not going to like make it to the finals or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll get more into this in the general NBA free agent segment of terms of favorites in the conferences. But, I understand that why he got away. I think it is tough, but look, I also think, like you said, Washington is not going to be a good team. I mean, when Bradley Beal is a nice player, but he's not really someone that you kind of build around. I don't think, especially at this stage of his career. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And also keep in mind, the Dinwiddie move was a sign and trade. So the Nets are getting a 2024 second round pick and they're getting a 2025 pick swap. So if the Wizards are really as bad as a lot of people think they might be, I mean, maybe Kuzma can lead this team. I don't know. But, if they're as bad as they're going to say that everyone thinks they are, that 2025 pick swap, is that going to be a higher pick that they can, maybe by that point, who knows if KD, Kyrie, and, Harden are even around. Maybe it'll benefit the Nets in other ways than maybe trading that pick somewhere else. And also, I think it's important to mention, just throw it in here real quick, the Nets also re-signed Bruce Brown, who is not a flashy name, but when you think about what the Nets did last year in terms of, they had a very solid regular season, especially given the fact that their big three hardly ever played together. And, Bruce Brown accepting the qualifying offer, I think he was a big part of that. He didn't play a whole lot, but when he did, he shot 55% from the field. Very solid player. So, we look at the Knicks, bringing in Kemba, bringing in Fournier, look at the Nets, bringing in Patty Mills, re-signing Bruce Brown, re-signing Blake Griffin. I should also, I guess, add, for the Knicks, re-signing Derek and Alec and, those guys. So, and Nerlens. So before we can move on to our next segment, I'm just kind of curious, Nick, if you're comparing these two free agencies, you're looking at where both teams right now, obviously they kind of have different expectations, at least I think they do. There's still a little bit to go in free agency, but of the local teams, who would you say was kind of the winner of NBA free agency up to this point?
I mean, I think it's only right to say the Knicks. You could say it's a little biased, but I feel like anytime you have a team making some major moves in free agency, you have to give them the benefit. I think the Knicks had more room to improve, I think, than the Nets. If you look at the Nets, they're obviously championship or bust. The Knicks are hoping to kind of repeat, I think, this season, maybe at least get out of the first round this time. There are definitely some New York fans who are this delusional thinking they can win a title right now. But I think they are 100% capable of getting to the second round and who knows, maybe even making a run like the Hawks did to the conference finals. But I think the Knicks have to take the cake because they picked up 2 big names to help, not necessarily big names, but names to help their biggest weakness in Fournier and Kemba, just guys who can put the ball in the basket. That's what they struggled with. When they do not play well, it's because they don't score. The defense is always there because of Thibodeau, but you can't just put. I guess you can't put points on the board. If you're not doing that, where's the offense coming from? So you got these 2 guys coming. I think it's great. The Nets obviously didn't have as much to do, but I think the Knicks, just because of the moves they made, the number of moves they made, and the impact that they have, I think they're the winners in free agency for those 2 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, I think also we got to, and I talked about it a little bit myself, we got to also keep in mind that Nets a little more financially hamstrung, also different, like you said, different expectations. I'll go with the Knicks as well, but this is my caveat to it. This is only a successful offseason if Julius Randle plays like the guy that he was in the regular season, not the playoffs.
Exactly.
I'm personally concerned as a Knicks fan, and, obviously there's something to talk about at the months leading up to the regular season, but I'm concerned that, what Julius are we going to get? Are we going to get the guy that was the most improved NBA player of the year, or are we getting the guy who, frankly, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in the
Yeah.
playoffs? Like, he just was so off, So it'll be interesting to see what happens, what these both teams' free agent signings kind of do impact wise. But, I think that's going to do it for our Knicks and Nets talk for now. But don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be talking more NBA coming up after the break. We'll be discussing all the big moves made league wide outside the New York area. You're watching One on One Nightly. Michael Legan here, you there, in the words of legendary Steve Summers. I am, of course, joined by Nick Feta. This is One on One. Of course, it cannot be a nightly sports talk show without me giving a little praise to the schmoozer, of course. So let's break down some of the other big NBA free agency moves. A lot to get to here, Nick. We teased it throughout most of the show so far. Let's start off with the Bulls, who I think is probably the biggest name or biggest team that's made the most moves. I mean, you could say the Lakers, but I just think the younger kind of nature of the players and just the energy that it's bringing. I kind of want to start off with the Bulls. Also, we've been talking Eastern Conference basketball anyway. So, I mentioned it off the top of the show. You had Caruso coming to the Bulls. You had Lonzo Ball coming to the Bulls. And, of course, also DeMar DeRozan in a sign and trade. Lonzo was also a sign and trade, I should mention as well. So your thoughts on what the Bulls have done, maybe pick one of the moves. I don't know which one stands out the most to you. And just kind of like, what do you think about the move the Bulls have made? Because frankly, for me, I found it, a little surprising that they were able to get three bigger. I mean, Caruso is who he is, but to get these guys this early on, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it was a great approach by the Bulls this offseason. They're a team who Zach LaVine is, I think, not necessarily superstar level, but he's certainly an all-star, and I think he can get to that superstar level. He's still so young, just crazy talented, and now he's kind of has a little bit more of a core around him to help build and develop. I'll start by saying I think the Bulls are making the playoffs in some way, shape, or form, as long as they're healthy. You have a starting lineup most likely of Lonzo at the point, LaVine at the 2, DeMar DeRozan 3, maybe Patrick Williams at the 4, and then Vucevic at the 5. That's a very solid 5 guys going out there night on a nightly basis. You asked me to pick one. I guess my favorite move, I think it's Lonzo. I've been a Lonzo fan, I mean, since he was in college, but I think he's just now, finally, he's not a guy who, I guess, he's not a LeBron type of player who comes in right away, makes an impact like Luka. He's a guy who you give him a few years, and now he's starting to shoot the ball more efficiently. He's always been a great defender, always been a great playmaker. Those abilities are heightened as well. He's getting the time and run he needs to become a more talented all-around player. You put him on this team as a facilitator, as a defender, hopefully as a shooter as well. I think he really can take a next step in Chicago. I know he's bounced now his third team, and I think his fourth or fifth year in the league, maybe. I think it's his fourth year. But I think he's really has a chance now to grow, especially with you put him with Zach LaVine. It could be, Zach's very athletic. People are sad that Lob City in New Orleans was done with Zion. Who knows? Maybe something happens here. But I also think him just playmaking with LaVine as the 1 and the 2, I think would be fantastic. I think here might be the best destination he's had to grow as a player and develop in his career. So I'm looking forward to him in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of respond to what you're saying about Lonzo Ball. I mean, look, I've never been a huge Lonzo Ball guy. I mean, I think his father's hilarious, but for all the wrong reasons. But I'm not really a big Lonzo guy. A little disappointed coming out of the draft. I think there was a lot of pressure on him. Like, let's be honest, you're getting drafted to the Lakers, one of the most storied franchises in NBA history. A franchise that has had two of the most storied point guards of all time in Jerry West and Magic Johnson. I mean, to step into those shoes, even with Magic at the time was the GM. When Magic Johnson is saying you're going to be great and is saying you're going to turn the franchise around, it's easy to understand, especially with his father's antics, like why there was so much pressure and why it didn't really work out with him. And LeBron comes in, and like you said, he turned things around in New Orleans. I mean, this past season, career highs in 3-point percentage, career highs in field goal percentage, true shooting was up, points per game was up, career low in turnovers. So look, he's really turning it around. So that's a great thing. I think it helped that he was playing in a smaller market in New Orleans. I mean, that's not like a super small market, but it's not LA. I think it also helped that, it was a younger team. That being said, there were still expectations. So I still think he was able to thrive under some sort of pressure. I think overall it's a good move. Look, the Bulls are a team that's on the come up now. I think, like you said, the Bulls have to make the playoffs this year, especially with the play-in tournament. I find it hard to believe that they don't get one of the seeds. I mean, I think they're going to have enough talent, and we'll get into the other moves in a second. But look, Lonzo's going to be your floor general. He'll help you out. He's not a guy who you're going to look for scoring, but that's not why you brought him here. So I think it's a pretty good deal. And look, it's a sign and trade, so the Bulls are sending a few players and a second-round pick to the Pelicans their way. I mean, that is what it is. And I think one concern about Lonzo, and I don't know if you have any concern about this, he's actually never played a full season.
Yeah,
every year of
definitely.
his career, it is 4 years, like you said. He drafted in 2017. So he hasn't played a full season. So my question is there's always a concern with a guy that has injury history, whether he can really live up to a deal. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Definitely. That's been, I guess, part of the downfall of him. I was very excited to watch him in LA, and I'd be waiting and waiting and waiting, and he would just be out. So yeah, especially at this age too, he's still very young. You don't really want to see the injuries piling up too early in a career. I'm hoping again, maybe his play style changes a bit with that. He is playmaking oriented. The defending, I think, will still be there for sure. But yeah, I anytime a guy cannot be on a court for at least 70 games in a season, you're a little concerned. Especially for me, really, it is because he's so young. 4 years in the league, and he's you might have it open, but I don't know how many games he's missed exactly, but it's a lot, to say the least. So I think there is some concern, but again, the Bulls have a lot of surprisingly a lot of backcourt depth with Lonzo, LaVine, Caruso, Kobe White, even Ayo Dosunmu out of Illinois. So I think again, maybe just be careful with some minutes early on as a coach. And then again, what do I know as an NBA coach? But I think Lonzo, he is the talent, the potential, I guess, is always there with him. It's just he's got to stay on the court. Anyone who gets injured often, you have worries about. And if he goes down, that changes the whole image of this Bulls team. Who's their number one facilitator if Lonzo's not on the court? Who knows?
Yeah. And I think, when we talk about facilitators, it's kind of interesting because now I want to kind of shift over to the DeRozan sign and trade and, or the trade rather. And, what I find interesting is that, with DeRozan, let's be honest, he was not the same guy that he was when he was in Toronto. I don't think we can deny it. But when doing a little bit of research and kind of thinking about, how much were his numbers really down? The one thing that really stood out to me was, look, he's averaging 21.6 points a game. I mean, not a lot of guys average over 20 points. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's pretty solid especially for the length of time that he's done that. But the past 3 years in San Antonio, he's posted career highs in assists. So, I think when he was over in San Antonio, he might have been relying more on he might have been more of a facilitator. I can't tell you that I was staying up at 11 o'clock to watch, a Spurs team that wasn't really a contender. So when he got to Toronto, I can't say I was watching his game constantly. But, I'll be interested to see, you talk about Lonzo being a facilitator. It seems like DeMar was kind of, even though he's a scorer, he's a guy that you're going to get the ball to, he was giving out assists. And I wonder if now that you have a true point guard, because look, I mean, San Antonio, we just talked about Patty Mills a few minutes ago. I mean, ever since Tony Parker left, I mean, who in San Antonio is really like this amazing point guard that's really going to help you out? So, I mean, with DeRozan having a solid point guard in Lonzo, I wonder how much that's going to help him out now. So I'll be interested to see if the point goes up, the assists go down. I think, the biggest thing with DeMar, and I'm sure you could add to this as well. I mean, first off, he's going to take that offensive pressure off of Zach LaVine. I mean, Zach LaVine, I think, I don't know if you would agree with this, when he got traded to Chicago, the progress that he's made, I think, has been kind of surprising. I mean, we always thought about him as the dunk contest guy. I don't really think anyone thought he was going to be the star. Nope. And then with the Bulls team that had no expectations, he's kind of, maybe the space of having none of those expectations has helped him. But, with him there, I think there's, he's been the focal point. Now you get DeMar in, he's going to help with the offensive production, take a little bit of pressure off of Zach. And the other thing that I found kind of interesting is actually the Bulls were dead last in the league in getting to the free throw line. They took the fewest free throw attempts per game. And DeMar averages 7.2 free throws a game, which is good for eighth best in the league. So you're bringing in a guy who's not only going to make shots and get some offensive production, but he's going to get to the line, which is something that you desperately needed as a team last year. And I guess we can break down Caruso a little bit as well. But I mean, your thoughts. We talked about Lonzo now with DeMar. I mean, what do you think he can really bring to this team now?
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. I think he can be either or, a playmaker or that scorer. He'll definitely take pressure off LaVine. This isn't necessarily where I wanted to see him go. I was hoping maybe he'd go not to the Lakers. I think that's just a little too much. But if he were to go to a team, I don't know, maybe like the Jazz or something, a team that was kind of there, and you add another piece, and maybe they have a chance to win. But him going to this team, I think the biggest impact I think he'll have is this Bulls team is still very young. I think the impact he'll have is A, the leadership, and B, kind of just developing these guys. He's going to take the pressure off LaVine, and arguably those guys play very similar. If you look at DeMar in a few years back in Toronto, very similar styles of play. LaVine's a bit better of a shooter, but they both take it to the hoop. They're both kind of iso ball scorers. I think it's going to be really good for those two to pair up and kind of learn, DeMar or teach LaVine, and LaVine will learn from DeMar. I think it'll be very interesting. I guess if you want to talk about the playmaking, I don't think he'll necessarily do as much unless Lonzo goes down, because DeRozan can still score. He's getting up there in age, but he's not old. He still has, I would say, a year or two left of kind of prime-ish years where he can contribute, but he doesn't need to be that guy. He's not the best player on this team, and I think he'll understand that and want to, get these guys to be better than him for the future as a teammate. So I think, DeRozan, he's not a guy, from what I've seen, who's kind of hunting for that ring. I think he wants to be in it for the long haul, just keep playing. And I think it's going to be really good for him just to be there to help mold and develop this young Bulls team.
Yeah, and then I think last, we covered the two big moves of the Bulls. I mean, Caruso, look, you think about the memes and all that, but look, he's a very solid player. I mean,
absolutely.
The numbers are not going to wow you. I'm a little shocked that he got a 4-year, $37 million deal. I think it's just kind of the NBA. But look, he's a great defender. He can facilitate on offense. I mean, when he does shoot the three, he's shooting 40%. So, I mean, that's something, I guess. But, this is the best way to put it. I think LeBron loved playing with him. LeBron was a huge supporter of him. And if LeBron thinks you're a good player and you belong on the floor with him, then I think, you're probably worth your stuff in the NBA.
Yeah, again with Caruso, it's if the Knicks were to sign him, I'd be happy. He's a tough player, and he shows. If you look up out Caruso career highlights, he's got some phenomenal plays. Whether it's passing, somehow dunking the way he does, but he's a very solid NBA player. He'll be a role player his whole career for sure. But I think he brings two things to this Bulls team where he can come in and run the point if you need it, and he's also a guy who has winning experience, and you need that on teams with young guys who are looking to grow and develop. So while same thing with DeRozan. While he hasn't won a ring, he's been to the playoffs. He's been on these deep runs and has that experience when you need it. Caruso, of course, has it at a bit higher level of a champion. But I think it's really interesting because I think that's where the money comes from, perhaps. Maybe the fact that he has won, that gives him a little more credibility to his name. But he's just a really reliable player, and that's part of it, too. You know what you're going to get out of Alex Caruso every night. And I think him on this Bulls team kind of just, he could go to any sort of team and play the same role. But on the Bulls, he brings, of course, a little bit of excitement because it's Alex Caruso. But that same sort of mentality of, hey, I've been there, let's do this, and let's get down to work. And I think that's what the Bulls have needed for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I totally agree with that. Overall, I think this was just a solid. I mean, let's see what else to do in free agency. But when you add these three guys to Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, I mean, look, you're going to have a solid year. I think that, is this going to be one of the best teams in the East? Probably not. But this is, they're going to make it. Hopefully, they should make the playoffs, like we said, and we'll see what happens. But of course, when you talk about a team that's made a lot of moves in free agency, it's hard not to talk about the Lakers, who I think have made a really interesting string of decisions here on the initial days of free agency. I mean, they brought back a bunch of guys who have been in the organization. They brought in some new guys. And of course, the Westbrook trade we talked about last week on one-on-one. There's nothing else more really to say about that. But I really want to break down some of these signings that they brought in. Look, they brought back Dwight Howard, who, was a key part of that 2020 championship they won in the bubble. I don't think anyone can really deny it. I feel like they were really missing him this year. They had Marcus All, but I don't really think it wasn't the same, not the same type of player. I think it's a solid move to bring Dwight back. They brought in Trevor Ariza, who's a guy that it always seems that when LeBron goes somewhere, it's always like someone says, oh, they should get Trevor Ariza and bring him with LeBron. Yeah. So that it's finally seems to be happening. He's been around for so long that maybe some people forget, he was with the Lakers in 2009 when they won. Kobe was obviously still there. And so he's got a Lakers tie. They bring in Wayne Ellington, who's played for the Lakers before, Kent Bazemore, who's played for the Lakers before. We'll get into some of the other guys, the younger guys they signed. We'll get into Melo as well. But just looking at these four really veteran guys and Howard, Ellington, I guess four, yeah. Howard, Ariza, Ellington, and Bazemore. Like, what are your thoughts on those four? And just kind of like what stands out about them? Was it the right move? Are you concerned about the age here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think bringing back Dwight was the right move because, I think every team, as much as they say the big man is dead, I think every team needs that one kind of like enforcer player. I think for the Knicks, it's even Taj Gibson in a way. Dwight's not going to put up, 20 points, 12 rebounds like he did in his prime. It's not him anymore. But you need him just to be there. Maybe he'll have a night where he's got 3 blocks and 10 rebounds, and that's his role. So you need that kind of presence there. He's also, from what I see, he's a very good locker room presence. So I think he'll be, back there. I think he wants to be back there in hopes that he can win again with them. So I think that's smart. Bazemore, I'm not sure necessarily. He's kind of iffy for me in a way where he could have games where I'm like, wow, that was Kent Bazemore, and then he's got games where I was like, oh, okay, that's Kent Bazemore. He's kind of iffy in that sense, but I think it's a good pickup because of that. Almost like I see him almost like the replacement for KCP in a way. But then you look at the other guys, Wayne Ellington, just sharpshooter. That's what the Lakers need. They need shooting. Every team does nowadays. And then remind me who the fourth person was you told me?
You said Bazemore, we said Howard, we said Ariza, Ellington. Did you say Ellington?
Oh, Ariza was the one. Ariza I love. Ariza's the one that I absolutely love. I'm surprised Ariza reminds me of PJ Tucker just because of obviously they both played in Houston, but they're just longevity guys. They're in it they're just tough players. Ariza, I think, obviously a little bit better of a scorer. He could shoot the basketball from more than just the corner, unlike PJ. But again, second stint with the Lakers, he's won. You bring him in. I think it's a great sign. Even last year with Miami, I think he almost averaged 10 points a game off the bench. So you have him, another great guy, and I think it's every time the Lakers, I think they reshape themselves every year. You have your questions, but the core, the main core, I should say, with Westbrook, LeBron, AD. I won't really group Melo into that because he's not as that high of a playing caliber right now. But I think that core of guys can help incorporate these guys to make them more of a cohesive unit as a team to be a much better squad than they were last year.
Yeah, in terms of when you think about LeBron and also like bringing in Westbrook, the whole thing is you got to bring in shooters to surround these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
these are guys who are not going to shoot high 3-point percentages. They're not going to shoot high from the field. I mean, Ellington, career 38.2% 3-point shooter. I mean, he shot 44.2% from three last year. So, I mean, that's a guy you're hoping can give you some 3-point field goals. Bazemore is a guy who shot over 40% from three last year. These are guys that you're going to hope are going to get the points up. I mean, also you think about some of the younger guys they signed that maybe went a little more under the radar because all these like veterans. I mean, these guys are no names, but Malik Monk they brought in. He can help you shoot. He can shoot high from three. They got Kendrick Nunn, who was all rookie first team with the Heat in 2020. I mean, those are some moves that have kind of gotten overlooked by the veteran signings, but I think those are pretty solid moves. Any thoughts on those guys or the idea that it seems to me that the Lakers are really making a priority because I think it was an issue in the playoffs of we got to get 3-point shooters to surround LeBron and surround Russ.
Yeah, I really like Malik Monk. He shot 40% from three last season, which I was surprised to read. I thought he was much streakier than that. But he's been in the league a couple years now where he, again, developing, growing, he knows his role. And I think his role fits perfectly in LA. He's surprisingly athletic, and he's a fantastic shooter. You put that with LeBron, you put that with Westbrook, and you've got a great fit. And then Kendrick Nunn, too, I think was a guy who needed to get out of Miami. He played great there when he had a chance to win Rookie of the Year. Last season was not as great because he didn't get as much run. The Lakers don't have that much depth in the backcourt right now, so he'll definitely come off the bench behind Westbrook. But he's a guy that really can just provide some offensive punch when he's on his game. So, again, that's what the Lakers need. You got to have guys who can score. Surround it. Westbrook and LeBron, as they get older, the scoring will probably go down. But, of course, the IQ never changes, and their playmaking abilities will remain the same. But, you need the guys who can come in and kind of carry a load sometimes, especially in the long haul of the season. So I think those two guys are fantastic to play that role.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, look, what we're doing here, and you said it, is you're bringing in guys who are going to complement your stars. And I think that the Lakers, not so much in 2020, but definitely in LeBron's first year, and I think a little bit last year, fell into the trap of, well, this is a solid name. Let's bring him in. Let's see what they can do. And then necessarily bring in the guy who is going to be that great complementary piece. And I think hopefully if everything goes the way it's supposed to, that's going to work out. But I think the one, the biggest name we've omitted here, of course, is Melo. And, he's agreed to a 1-year deal with the team. It's reuniting Carmelo with his best friend LeBron, the Banana Boat crew, all that, with CP3 and D-Wade and all that. So, first time they're going to play together on an NBA team. Of course, they've done, All-Star and USA, but, who really cares about that? Melo, year 18, he averaged 13.4 points in 24 minutes last year, shot a career over 40% from three with the Trailblazers, and obviously bunch of All-Star appearances, bunch of all NBA selections, one of the best pure scorers in NBA history. A couple of concerns that I have, though, is number one, look, Melo, I think we can all agree. LeBron's like ageless. I think maybe he showed a little bit of a step off last year, but I think that had to do with maybe an injury, the ankle sprain, all that. But I think we can all agree, Melo's just not the guy he was. He's better as a complimentary piece. He was out of the league essentially until Portland gave him another shot. My concern is, though, here comes Melo into this locker room with LA. I think he thrived and, benefited from a bench role. But I think that's because he kind of bought into it. Whereas when he was with OKC in Houston, they were like, we want you off the bench. And he was like, no, I'm a star. So, I'm wondering if being back with LeBron, because I think he, whether or not, I don't think any of us agree to this, but, I think he views himself as LeBron's equal. So LeBron's still the guy that's going to play big minutes, draw on the star power, etc. Is Melo really going to be, able? And I know I think I'm a little, biased because, obviously with the Knicks, there was always a lot of locker room drama and stuff. But, I'm just curious whether or not he'll be able to buy in and live with the fact that, like, LeBron's my guy, but, he's going to start and play the big minutes, and I'm a bench guy that's going to help shoot. I think he'll benefit from being one of the shooters on the team. But I just don't know, like, locker room chemistry-wise, if being back with LeBron, he can still do that.
He's buying in 100%. And I say this for two reasons. Because I think now, Melo has accepted that role and in my opinion, thrived in it. Shooting 40% from the three-point line is great for anyone. Put that on Melo's name. Okay, now you're talking about a guy who's obviously he's not the same athlete nor scorer as he used to be. But if he's going to shoot the three ball, that's the role he needs to play. And I think he's accepting that also for two reasons. He wants to win a ring, and he knows now that, okay, LeBron and we're getting older. We're getting close to the tail end of our careers. This is the reason why they've teamed up now. They would never team up in I don't know, 2012 when it was the battles between the Heat and the Knicks. They would never team up back then because that's when he viewed them as equals. I think he knows now, okay, LeBron is LeBron. I'm going to go and do what I need to do to win because, why did he sign with the Lakers then? He wants to win. He wants to win now. It's obviously, who knows how many more years he's got. I love Melo, but he's running out of gas. I think, this potentially could be it for him. He wins here. I think he retires, but I think he's going to accept that role because he needs to know, all right, fine, if I have to do this to win, and I think he did this in Portland great. It's just Portland was kind of a weak team as a whole. But anyway, if I need to take a bench role to win, okay. I'm 30, I think he's 37 right now, 37 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I have to do. I'm not 2009 Carmelo where I almost beat Kobe in the conference finals. It's a different sort of, he's a different player now is what it is. And I think he knows that and he's accepting it. And with this team, I think LeBron and him have just such always respect, but an appreciation for each other as players now, and they're going to be able to work that together, I think, with the whole team. So I have confidence in Melo's ability to play his role with this squad.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it when you were talking about him. I mean, he's looking for that ring. He's made one conference appearance. He's never been to the finals. Of course, CP3, you think of them all together. He made his first finals appearance this year with the Suns. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm a big guy that believes in like luck and fate and stuff, and you can debate whether or not you believe in that. But I wonder, what karma is going to work out here. Is it going to be the karma of LeBron always being in the finals and always getting over that hump to the finals, or is Melo's kind of bad mojo going to bring him back a little bit? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just kind of like a little superstitious thing. But in terms of real numbers, I mean, the Lakers added, and we kind of mentioned it, 6 guys who are older than 32, age 32 or older. And of the 12 players currently on the roster, the average age is 31. You're talking about guys who are on the older side. Crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see how, Frank Vogel kind of manages the minutes, make sure guys stay healthy, and see how that goes going forward. But of course, we got to look kind of bigger picture as well. We focus a lot on the Bulls and the Lakers. I want to kind of throw out some other teams here and some other moves that have happened. I think, the biggest other team, and I want to hear your thoughts, is the Heat. Getting Jimmy Butler, that big Mac extension, 4 years, $187 million, getting Kyle Lowry on a 3-year deal, re-signing Duncan Robinson. I mean, your thoughts on all these moves. You said PJ Tucker off the top. Where do you see the Heat? They were just in the finals a couple years ago. What do you think of the moves they made?
Yeah, I love the moves they made. I don't necessarily think they're going to get to the finals again, just because of how strong the East is. You have, I don't know what Ben Simmons will happen there, but you have the Sixers, the Nets, the Bucks, I think, as the top dogs in the East, and it's going to be hard to take any of them down. But you know what? It's definitely good moves. If the Heat didn't do anything this offseason, you may not even see them in the playoffs next year. Jimmy Butler is just one of the toughest players in the league, but he's not necessarily a guy who can will a team on his own, like a LeBron could, like a maybe Luka Doncic could, frankly, because he's not a superstar in the league. He's a star. You need to pair stars with other stars or other great players around them. So bring in Lowry, a great player. Bam Adebayo, who I think will be one of the best bigs, if he isn't already, in the league in a couple of years. Still so young, still developing. Duncan Robinson, hefty price, but at the same time, of course he's a hefty price. He's arguably the best shooter in the league. I mean, catch and shoot, just player in the league, role-playing shooter. You need guys like that. And I watch him shoot the basketball, and it's an art form with him. So definitely needed to bring him back. And then I said the same thing with Ariza. I love PJ Tucker. Finally he won. He played all those dirty minutes with the Rockets in the later part of the 2010s. I love PJ. I think he's going to be great for them. Again, they got him kind of at a hefty price, but he's a champion, so he'll bring, the stats are never there for him, but he brings that toughness, that grit, that intensity, already paired with guys like Lowry and Butler who have that. So they will be tough. Every game you play them, it will be a tough game. I think they've made their team a lot more bolstered in the core, which will help them win games and hopefully make a run in the playoffs, because I do like that squad in Miami. I think, again, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, as teammates and friends, they're hilarious to watch just as a fan. A great relationship. And then, you bring back those guys. Duncan, Bam will obviously be there, and then PJ Tucker. Those are their main moves. I think it could be something, maybe I want to give them all the best, but I think it's not going to end up in a championship. But I think they are a very good team now and much stronger, of course, than they would have been without these moves.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up. I mean, look, the Heat, kind of had frankly, were embarrassed in a way in the
Yeah,
playoffs this year with the Bucks. I mean, they really
definitely.
didn't put up much of a fight, so they definitely need to go out and make some big moves. And Pat Riley is always trying to, bring in big stars, dramatically change the team. So this isn't really much of a surprise. Age is a question here. Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler are on the older side now. We'll see what happens there. But before we move on to our, we hit the break and we go to our next segment. We're talking some baseball. Ryan Greg Worrell will be joining us in just a couple of minutes. I'm just curious, Nick. I just want to throw out a couple of big contracts here. Steph Curry, 4 years, $215 million extension. Chris Paul, 4 years, $120 million with the Suns. Trae Young signing a 5 year, $207 million extension. Keeping in mind these big contracts, keeping in mind all the sign and trades and signings that we've talked about, you know, I would like to hear who are let's just say two teams from the East and two teams from the West. It could be teams that were favorites last year. Maybe you think things have changed a little bit. I'd love to hear maybe two teams from each conference you'd like favorited right now.
I think you got to keep the Bucks, the reigning champs. I think it would be a crime if you didn't. And then, assuming the Nets are healthy, you keep the Nets. The East teams in the East have made great moves, but I don't think it's enough to beat those top dogs. Like I said with the Heat, so I think you got the Nets and the Bucks as the top two in the East. Over in the West is interesting because you have to throw the Lakers at the top, of course, because any team with LeBron James will be a threat until he retires, I think. They also, of course, are stacked. They won 2 years ago. Injuries could have prevented them from winning last year. But I throw the Lakers up top. And then that second spot can really go a lot of different ways. I love Phoenix, but I think if it wasn't this year, it's not going to happen for them at all. Signing Chris Paul, like you said, they had to do it, but they're going to be paying him $30-40 million a year when he's 40 years old. That's going to be kind of a burden on them. Kawhi goes back to the Clippers. You always got to throw them in there. So I think that could be it, especially because without Kawhi, that Clippers team toppled the they toppled the Jazz, who were the number one seed in the West. So I think I'm going to throw the two LA teams up top because I'm starving for that matchup to happen in the conference finals. A healthy Lakers and a healthy Clippers. It's yet to happen, but I think those two teams, even though the Clippers haven't done anything yet, assuming they bring back Kawhi, I think it's those two teams in the West.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I totally agree with you on both sides. In the East, you got to go Bucks, got to go Nets. In the West, I like Phoenix, but I'm not really sure, so I'm going to have to go with the Lakers. I think they made a lot, and the Clippers too. Honestly, we could do an entire show on the NBA, but of course there is some baseball news to get to. So Nick, we're going to move on to that. But after the break, Nick and I are going to be joined by our Yankees beat reporter Ryan Gregware. Stay tuned for more of One-on-One Nightly. Welcome back to One on One Nightly. I am Michael Legan, of course, alongside Nick Fada. Right now, we are joined by our Yankees beat reporter, Ryan Gregler. Ryan, great to have you on the show with us right now. We definitely want to get some inside scoops here on the Yankees. So much to get into, but first off, we don't want to keep it too long, but we got to know what is going on right now. What's the score? Any big highlights that our listeners, our viewers should be aware of?
Yeah, literally as you're talking, a big 2-run, I think, single from Stan to bring the lead to 6-3. I'm in a back room here. I can hear the cheers trying to go off that. But yeah, down 3-0 early. It did not look good. They fought back now 7-3, 3-run scored. Wow. So bases 7-3, bottom 7 here. Looks good for the Yankees to take 2 of 3 from the Orioles and keep going on. And just to get back, thanks for having me on, guys. I really love doing these updates, and I appreciate spending time with you guys.
And Ryan, so we've got the two new guys, Rizzo, Gallo. What are your thoughts so far on them?
Yeah, I mean, Rizzo's obviously been the story, right? Another homer today, 13 pitch at bat, walk in his first at bat. Just unreal the way he grinds out at bats, the way he makes contact. He's been everything the Yankees could ask for. He has an RBI in his first 6 games as a Yankee, their first player in their in their history to do so. So his impact, you can't understate it. They sweep the Marlins. They debatably get swept without Rizzo. That's the impact he had on 3 close games. And Gallo, he hasn't had the big hits so far. Still waiting for that first Yankee homer, but it'll come for him. I'm not concerned at all. He's a streaky hitter. We knew this going in. His fielding's been great attitude, hustles hard. And so it will come, but so far you have to really give Cashman credit, particularly for Rizzo, a move that came out of the box. People didn't see it coming. And Rizzo's just been so unbelievable. Like, he's been everything the Yankees could have dreamed of and more. I think he's hitting 500 for the Yankees. So, yeah, you love that Cashman went out and got these bats at the deadline. And so far, it is paying off. It really is. They've won 4 of 5, maybe about to be 5 of 6 with them. So good mojo, good clubhouse guys as well. And just really overall, I only have positive things to say.
And then on the flip side, Ryan, when we look more at the pitching, I think one of the biggest stories this week has been the COVID diagnosis for Garrett Cole and Jordan Montgomery. We saw last night some debuts for some new guys. How are the Yankees approaching this COVID situation? What is the plan going forward in terms of starters and relievers? What insight, if any, can you offer there?
Yeah, so we have a projected rotation for the Seattle series coming up. 4 games at the stadium versus the Mariners. It's going to be really big. Right now, they're tied. The Mariners actually just leapfrogged them with the win today. But, these are games that the Yankees will have to win. The Mariners are in it right now. And with their 2 most, I think, consistent and reliable starters throughout the year, obviously Tyone, who pitched well tonight. He's certainly emerged now. But Cole, we know everything. Monty was one that hurt with the depth. We're going to have Nestor Cortez start tomorrow. He's not completely stretched out. And then a bullpen day following him. So it was crucial that Tyone pitched deep into this one. He did pitch into the 7th. Right now, it's just been him and Loizaga. And you needed this because, with Nestor, you don't know how far he's going to go. Then you have a bullpen day. We don't know what that means. And then Andrew Heaney, the recent acquisition from the Angels, didn't look great in that first start versus the Orioles. And then Luis Gil, who you just, you kind of brought up, Yankee debut, major league debut yesterday, 6 shutout innings, really impressed from him. He's going to have to step up. He's going to get another start. He deserves it. And that's what we're looking at so far. It's not the prettiest. It's not the sexiest. They have to piece it together, though, figure out ways. The offense will have to step up here. I think all year it's been dancing around the pitching. When the pitching's hot, they've won. There hasn't been a consistent weak stretch where the offense has carried them, and that's going to have to be here, especially without Cole and Montgomery coming up this series.
And Ron, so keeping what you just said in mind, of course, as fans, I've been very optimistic. I want to keep my hopes up. We've got about 56 games left in the season, if I did my math right. What are your hopes, or what are your thoughts on the Yankees' playoff chances here as the season's coming closer to a close?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I really am. Tough win for the A's today. Your scoreboard watching in the beginning of August, not the best, certainly. You wish you weren't in this position where I'm sweating out A's-Padres games, but it's where we are. You can't look in the past, dwell on that kind of stuff. So I do believe at the end of the day, the Yankees will be in the playoffs. Probably not going to win the division, 6.5 out right now. The Rays, I think, are just too good. I think they're going to win too many games, but it is in play. It's not completely out of the question. And the wild card, I think, is the Yankees' path to the playoffs. I really do. Whether it's the A's or Red Sox, I do see the Red Sox kind of struggling here. I'd be really concerned if I was a fan of them. They lost 5 in a row. It doesn't look great. The pitching is kind of regressing back to form here. But I am optimistic. I think the Yankees, the trade deadline acquisitions were huge. I think they're hot right now. They're playing their best baseball of the season. We're rebounding from a tough month of June. The whole month of July, I think they've won 16 of 24. So, I think this is the start of what Yankees baseball should be. And overall, I am optimistic this team will be in the playoffs at the end of the day. Nothing's a given, especially in this AL where it really is a gauntlet. You have teams like the Mariners who came out of nowhere. The Blue Jays are going to be a really tough out, but the Yankees have too much talent, Nick. I think at the end of the day, it's going to keep stepping up. They're going to keep winning series, and they will be a wild card team come October 4th.
And then, Ryan, just one last question, I guess, for the both of us before we let you go. I really appreciate you hopping on with us. In conjunction with Nick's question about playoff chances, if you could just give us an insight, whether it is one of these guys that the Yankees traded for or a guy that's been here, off the top of your head, who do you think is the most important guy for this team going forward in terms of playoff potential, and who needs to get hot right now or who needs to keep it going? Who is that one guy?
It's a great question to end on because I don't think many fans will share this take of mine. I think it's DJ LeMahieu. I think when you look at it, he's the guy who's going to have to step up because the Yankees have not shown, they're not backing off from him. They're throwing him at the leadoff spot every day. We know the leadoff spot is your most important lineup. It's who's getting the most at-bats. The last 2 years, he's been a godsend MVP candidate, led the league in hits, led the league in average, all that. This year, it's been a huge struggle. He's been the poster child of it. In the 260s with no power. And so it's really been a regression year for him. And this game, he has 2 hits, 2 RBIs. So it's been really nice to see that. But I do think at the end of the day, he's going to have to be, the machine that we all saw the last 2 years where with runners in scoring position, he was a 400 hitter. He's in the 250s this year. And it's tough to say, to pinpoint one guy, because I don't think there is. I think you need a Gleyber Torres to turn around as well. I think you need these acquisitions to really hit and balance out the lineup the way they're supposed to. But DJ LeMahieu is a guy I'm looking at, especially with him being in the leadoff spot. He has to be the machine of the past. If the Yankees lineup, 1 through 9 the last few years, it's been a gauntlet. It really has. And without LeMahieu at the top getting things started the way we're accustomed to seeing this year, it's really hurt the offense. It's really hurt the growth. The first inning, they've rarely had big innings. So DJ LeMahieu, I think for certain, is going to have to, we see today he's played well, had a good game yesterday, some doubles. I think it's going to be up to him that really has to start hitting here, get hot, have 3 hit games, have monster days at the plate if the Yankees offense wants to really break out.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ryan. I think DJ, I said it a few weeks ago on an episode 101. I said if the Yankees are going to make the playoffs, they need DJ to play like an MVP. So I totally agree with you on that. Well, Ryan, we don't want to keep you too long. There's definitely, I hear a lot of cheers going on back there. So thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate all the insights into the Yankees and enjoy the rest of the game. Yeah,
thanks. It's tough. I'm trying to watch on the monitor here, going back and forth. But anytime I can get talking on 101 Nightly, I'm all for it. So thanks, guys, for having me.
Thanks, man.
All right, well, that was Ryan Gregoire, our Yankees beat reporter. Really appreciate him hopping on. You hear, that's live reporting stuff going on as we're talking. So that was some good stuff, some good insights from Ryan. But Nick, let's just continue the Yankee conversation. I mean, I know you're a big Yankee fan. I kind of want to go back a little bit here to the Rizzo discussion and the Gallo discussion because I find it kind of interesting how like the two of them, Gallo was the guy that everyone was talking about. They were like, "Oh, this is the guy they have to go after," and they got him. And the Rizzo was really the move that I didn't see coming. I don't really think a lot of Yankee fans saw coming. And to me, that was the move that I really wanted to give Cashman praise for, and that's the move that's really worked out the best. I mean, look, Rizzo is just the 5th Yankee ever, which including our list with Joe DiMaggio, to collect an RBI each of his first 4 games with the team. We did our our notes before tonight's game, but prior to what's going on right now, Rizzo had been 7 for 16 with 5 RBIs. I mean, he's just raking with the Yankees right now. So to see him, I'm not a Yankee fan. I can't say I really enjoy seeing the Yankees win, but it's been, if you are a Yankee fan, I'm sure it's very refreshing to see that. But on the opposite end, Ryan said it, he got a walk, but if Gallo had struck out, he was going to get booed. He has not been hot. I think he yet to has an RBI, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. Prior to coming to the Yankees, he was only batting 225, but again, that's not what you were getting him for. Not average. I mean, he had 25 home runs. He had an OPS of 869. He's top 10 on base percentage. He strikes out a lot, but you knew that coming in. It's obviously it's not even been a week yet. But if you had to compare the two deals, Your thoughts on Rizzo so far, your thoughts on Gallo so far, and the Yankees are 4-1 since the deadline. So, is this success sustainable?
I think it is, and it should be. Like we talked about with Ryan, their playoff chances are alive and well right now. They just have to keep winning and keep taking series, like I said earlier in the show. I'll start with Gallo, and Gallo is a player who, it's no secret, he is very what's the right word? When he plays well for you, he plays well for you, and when he plays bad for you, oh boy, the boos should come. He's boom or bust in a way. He's gonna hit your home runs. He's gonna strike out a lot, and he'll walk. It's really, you don't see much else. He had before he became a Yankee, he had 70 hits on the season. 25 of those were home runs, and his batting average was, I believe, 217. So that's nothing. The batting average, again, like you said, not what you sign him for, but that's where I was a little iffy getting him because he is a typical Yankee player we've had for so many years, where he's a guy who hits a home run or won't get you anything at all. But on the flip side of that, he gives an insane amount of protection to guys like Judge, guys like Stanton, who they're the heart of the order. You put him in there, and it's a fear factor, intimidation factor for pitchers, where you make one bad pitch and you could blow the game up. And he's also spectacular in the field, cannon of an arm. I think he'll break out. It's just a matter of when. So it's got to come sooner than later for us Yankee fans to be high on him. Whereas it's the exact opposite for Rizzo. Every Yankee fan's on cloud nine with him. I was so happy with that acquisition. Again, Rizzo's a winner. He's to me a great person to have in New York. He's extremely durable too, which is what I didn't know. I knew he really didn't miss many games, but if you look, he doesn't really miss more than 10 games a season in his career, which is phenomenal. And first base, we've been struggling all season with Voit not being there, and I don't think anyone expected him to be as hot as he has been since he came. Rizzo's about a 250 hitter. But, just the impact he's had right away has been just spectacular. I guess if you compare the two, obviously Rizzo right now has been the guy that the Yankees really, I guess the trade made better sense for him rather than Gallo right here. But I think Gallo can get it going. I did look at his stats right before he came. He started to pick up his game in July. He was starting to get a lot more multi-RBI games. Obviously, though, now it might be just a bit of adjustment for him to come to New York. Hopefully, though, I want to see these guys take advantage of that short right porch as two lefty hitters. As a lefty batter myself, I would love to take a hack and see what I could do at that porch. But I think these guys got it. Of course, it's a little bit of an adjustment period. But for Rizzo, it seems to be no problem, which I think puts a lot more pressure on Gallo. I think he'll find it, though. I really do. You want to have those high hopes. The guys that he mashes the ball. 25 home runs. It's, the power is there always. Contact, not as much. You just got to hope he can find some sort of stretch and life where he can get that momentum coming with the swing. And I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, you basically said it all. I mean, with Gallo, when you're talking about a guy who strikes out when he's down, he's really down. To me, you could have swapped out the name Gallo. I thought you were talking about Stanton. I mean, which is not really something that Yankee fans want to hear right now. But, look, it hasn't even been a week. I said it. You got to give Gallo some time to get adjusted. It's a big move. I think it helps that his old friend Odor is over on the roster.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I mean, we both said it. The Rizzo move has been great. But looking at the wild card standings, if you are a Red Sox fan, so obviously right now Tampa's in first of the division. I would say right now, just with Tampa's track record over the last few years, I'm fairly confident that I said on Saturday I thought the Red Sox were gonna end up winning the division. I have to take that back now after what I've seen over these last few days. I mean, the Red Sox are on a 5-game losing streak. They're up 4-0 right now over the Tigers, but look, I can't sit here and tell you I see the Red Sox winning the division right now. So I'm going to have to say Tampa wins the division. So then it's going to come down to Boston, Oakland, the Yankees, Seattle, and Toronto, in my opinion, for the wild card. And when you look at Oakland, and I said it on Saturday, that's a team that wins regular season games. I mean, they always do. The playoff success, not so much, but I'm fairly confident, especially with the roster they have there. That's a team that's going to get one of the wild card spots, probably the number one wild card spot with the way that the Red Sox are falling. So then to me, it comes down to really, I said it, the Yankees, Red Sox, Seattle, and Toronto for that second wild card spot. The Red Sox, I'm definitely afraid of right now, especially doing very little at the trade deadline. Schwarber, even when he's out right now, even when he comes back, like he's got to play first base, who knows that's going to go. Seattle, they had a very strange trade deadline with trading one of their better players, and I feel like it seems like there's some locker room issues over there. And Toronto, who knows? So right now, as much as it pains me to say this, I was at a point where I was saying I never thought the Yankees would even make the playoffs this year. But with the Red Sox going the way they are, they honestly remind me of the Mets. Honestly, I have to sit here and tell you that, look, in my opinion, I see the Yankees, locking up one of those wild card spots. And, with the A's, and I think Tampa takes the division. But, we'll see what Gallo does going down the road. I think hopefully for a Yankee fan, I think hopes that Rizzo continue to do it. But, that does it for our Yankees talk, I think. It's a little after 9:40 p.m. here on this Wednesday night. We got one more segment to go. The segment I have been waiting the whole show to get to. I wish we only got like 15 minutes to do it. I wish we could do, an hour about it. I could do a whole Mets show. But, after the break, we're going to be talking about the Kumar Rocker debacle, as I like to call it. So stick with us. This is a one-on-one. Once again, we are back here on One-on-One Nightly. That was our final break, so we're in our final segment. I am Michael Legan. Nick Fada is here with me tonight, of course. And before we end tonight's show, it would not be a Michael Legan program unless I had a little bit of time to bash the Mets. Anyone who's ever known me, knows that. Look, in recent days, I have been accused by some of being an overly negative Mets fan. Who was right, people? I think I was. We've been doing the show. I haven't been able to check the Mets score. They were winning before I came on this show. They're probably losing now. I don't know what they're doing. But the point is, look, I was very tough on the Mets as of late, and I honestly think rightfully so. I mean, the way they're playing in Miami is abysmal. And I know this isn't nothing to do with Rocker. We'll get to that in a second. But, the poor play in Miami, the division is slowly slipping away. I know it's a terrible division, but it's been very frustrating watching the Mets on the field. And, I'd said it before on the Saturday show about, I was very mixed on the deadline because I liked, our producer Alex Wells is telling me 3-3 in the top of the eighth. Of course they would blow a 3-0 lead. I would love to know what reliever gave that up. Thank you very much, Alex. I can't wait to yell at my TV after the show is over. Anyway, the point is that, I was very mixed on the trade deadline because they knew DeGrom was hurt. They didn't get a starting pitcher. Baez, I was fine with, but it didn't seem like they didn't get a reliever, which I was very upset about. They didn't get a quality starter. And, Walker is imploding in Miami again last night. And, Stroman's been up and down still. DeGrom is out even further now, it seems. So I was already down on the Mets on the field. I was already down on the Mets in terms of the front office execution. I was already saying that I didn't think Zach Scott deserved to come back the way that he had been performing as the Mets GM. Sandy, even though he doesn't get as much heat, should not be back as the president. And then what happens? As last week progresses, we start to hear these rumblings. It seems like the Mets and Kumar Rocker might not be able to come to a deal. And I'm like, what's going on over here? What are we talking about? And, I saw like one tweet from one beat reporter, like, this seems like it's posturing, a deal's going to get done. Like the Mets knew going, whatever. I was like, okay, all right. And then Sunday morning, I think it was, rolls around, and it's like Anthony DiComo, Mets beat reporter, is saying, yeah, a deal's not going to happen by the deadline. I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, what is going on here? I don't understand what this team is doing. And I know I'm going on a bit of a rant, but I need to because it's therapeutic. But like it's baffling to me. There's just two ways to look at it. So for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone knows, unless you're living under a rock, the Major League Baseball teams have a deadline to sign their draft picks by Sunday evening. I think it was like 4 or 5 o'clock. I don't remember the time exactly.
5 p.m. Yep.
5 p.m. Thank you, Nick. And so Rocker, who was the number 10 selection, everyone was shocked that he had fallen all the way down to 10. He had a $6 million signing bonus on the table, evidently, and all that went by the wayside. There are, the Mets, it seems, were very alarmed by his MRI in his elbow and his arm. He didn't do the voluntary, like through the MLB MRI. He did some kind of separate procedure, which was a little suspicious. So he doesn't get signed. There are some people in the Mets apparently who still think he's going to have a great career. Obviously, not enough of them did because they let him walk. So the Mets now will get the compensatory. I can't say the word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Compensatory. There we go. That's what I wanted to say. Compensatory pick in next year's draft, number 11 overall. In addition to whatever pick they're going to have anyway. For me, it's just such a disgrace that this happened, and it's just another indictment on the front office because. There's two ways of looking at it. Either number one, they had no idea that he was this injured, which shows you just how inept they are because if all these other teams knew he was this hurt and you didn't, that's pathetic. Or number two, they knew he was injured and they're like, he's going to fall to us. You know what? Let's take the risk. We're going to take him and we'll sign him. He'll get surgery. We know what we're getting going in. And obviously, neither of those. I'm leaning more towards the first option, to be honest. The fact that they didn't know. And to me, if that's the case, these guys got to go. That is unacceptable from a front office point of view, especially if other GMs around the league know that this guy has serious medical problems with his throwing arm. So it's an utter abomination. And between the Mets' putrid play on the field, it looks like who knows what's going to happen tonight. Probably a loss. I can't take it anymore. It was so bad last night. I was flipping through the channels. I put on like Lego Masters, like some reality TV show where people build Lego. I've never seen it before. It's like, I cannot watch this game. I got to put this on, here we go. Thank you. This is amazing. Alex is giving us updates as we're talking. 4-3 homer, Baez. I guess he was a good trade move. But anyway, I got to say, when I have to watch Lego Masters, which is probably a show aimed at 10-year-olds, you know that the Mets are playing bad. But between the bad play on the field, the lackluster trade deadline, Baez had a home run notwithstanding, and now this Rocker debacle, I don't know what to say about this organization. Nick, I've been ranting here for like 5 minutes. Take it away.
Yeah, I think you needed to do that 100%. Yeah. You were waiting the whole show, so I'm glad you got it out. And I agree for the most part with what you're saying. I think the major thing is the Mets, I think, desperately need DeGrom. Obviously, that's not an option right now. It's just such comfort knowing you have him on the mound. And he hasn't pitched in several weeks, I believe. So it's definitely a problem there.
Yeah, he hasn't pitched since literally
before the All-Star break.
The All-Star break is the last time he pitched. So it's been a while.
Exactly. So that is, I think they're always DeGrom is the number one concern. He's the best pitcher in baseball. That's simple. But to move past that, I agree. I think they should have done more at the deadline. I think if you were, DeGrom's been a little iffy with his health this whole season. You got to go and make a move. I thought Taijuan Walker, I didn't think he'd really be shaky after the break, but it was, the Mets pitching has never been necessarily a strong suit, I think you can say, one of the best pitching staffs in the league. But
I got to disagree with that, Nick, to be honest, because, look, going into the All-Star break before the sticky stuff deadline, the Mets had one of the best staff ERAs in baseball.
So my question is, what's happening now?
That's what's happening now. I think you could throw out a few factors. Look, I think the Mets is a franchise, and look, only true Met fans are going to know this. As a Yankee fan, I'm not going to knock you for not, being up on a loser franchise. But, the Mets, the one thing they've always had is pitching, from Seaver to Gooden, even like the 2000s with Al Leiter. We've had pitchers. Obviously in 2015, the whole thing was like they had this stable of Syndergaard, DeGrom, Harvey, Matz.
Oh, yeah,
Syndergaard and DeGrom, that pretty much worked out, but the other guys, not so much. Wheeler worked out, but the Mets were too dumb to resign him. Thank you, coupons, aka the Wilpons, for that one. So in this year, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting what happened. DeGrom, of course, I have high expectations for. Walker, I really didn't know what I was getting. It was a later signing, and Stroman, was up and down his first year at the Mets, opted out the COVID year, and now he was back. I didn't know, and he had a very strong first half, but he's been more up and down. Carrasco had been hurt. I wasn't expecting a whole lot, but the simple fact is they did perform very strong. And, coming out of the All-Star break, I was like, the pitching should still be a strength for this team. And the simple fact of the matter is that it hasn't. Exactly. And it's been very disappointing. I don't know if it's the sticky stuff ban, which it could be. I don't know if it's the fact that they're tired because of a shortened COVID season. They're not stretched out as much. I'm not really sure what's going on, but, my question to you is, putting the current team aside, you know, is under any circumstances, is it acceptable for a team to draft a player top 10, a guy that many thought could have been a top 3 pick and let him get away? I mean, what is that
No.
acceptable?
No, not at all. I mean, it's to me that's common sense. I don't see, obviously the health is just such a prominent issue in every sport, but baseball with pitchers, of course, it's the forefront factor of what makes you want to or not select a certain player. He's very young; he's 21 years old, but the numbers that he posted at Vanderbilt were phenomenal. I had to do my research on him. 122 innings and 20 starts last season, struck out 179 batters, 2.73 ERA. So he's eligible again for the 2022 draft, and that's all on the Mets. The compensation that they receive, I don't even know if compensation is the right word. It's almost like, oh, you didn't sign him, here you go, whatever, just take this. It's very Mets to me. I think you could probably agree with that.
It is.
I don't know what you're doing not signing. What my just generic most forefront, I think, common knowledge, not even talking sports, is you made a selection, a choice. Why would you not follow through with that choice? That to me was kind of, when I read it, I was like, what? Is that for real? I had to kind of second guess. I was like, what's the point of drafting someone if you do not plan on taking them, especially that high? So that I think is, it's unacceptable, as you said, as you made it very clear in your little rant as we started, but I don't know what the thought process was there. I mean, I'm sure. I'm not sure of anything. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't sign him. I'm baffled by the fact they didn't sign him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us are really going to know unless we're in their front office. I mean, there was a report that, Anthony Tacoma said that an offer was never even on the table at one point. Maybe that was Puma. Mike Puma, who's a Mets beat reporter, said that there was never even an offer on the table, apparently, which is absurd. They didn't even give him an offer that, apparently, and maybe this was just Boris, trying to make his client look good, but apparently he would have accepted anything, and the Mets didn't even try. I don't know. To me, and you just said it's the same old Mets. I don't know whether I could very well see this kid getting drafted next year by the Braves. He's going to go over there, be dominant against us, have a great career.
Terrible.
Yeah, and that's just a classic Mets move right there. The one thing, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. And as we're approaching the end of our show, is looking at it from a greater from a Mets perspective. Look, I'm very upset by this from a Mets point of view. To me, it's another nail in the coffin of Zach Scott and Sandy. Looking at it from a Rocker's standpoint, or from a guy entering the MLB draft, he's not going to be eligible. He can't sign with any other club. He's not allowed to, and he won't be eligible to enter the draft until next year, 2022. And he's already, and I think this is foolish, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. He's already ruled out a return to Vanderbilt. Ooh. And so there's a question of what is he going to do in this 1 year off, especially with the NCAA changes. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. But, your thoughts on, is it fair that he can't sign with anyone? And, what should Rocker do in this, this one season as he prepares for the draft?
I almost think you snooze, you lose as the Mets. I think he should be able to sign. If you get drafted and then now you have to wait a year because that team didn't capitalize. Now you as the player are penalized for it. I don't necessarily like that ruling at all. Especially, he can't return. He's really got nowhere to go. What is he going to play overseas? I don't like it at all. Really, I think you can't go back to school. He's not a Met clearly, and he doesn't have the opportunity to further his career options. Just like in any other industry that you may partake in, not just sports. If you don't get one job opportunity, you should be able to look for another. So that's what I think is a little unfair in this matter. Especially because he doesn't have an option to go back to school. He's done, and he's got to wait now. Not just he's not eligible for 2021. He's got to wait a whole another year, whole another season of not playing in the big leagues or minor leagues. Obviously, if he weren't just to be called right up. But I think maybe I don't know. The MLB is just such iffy rules in a lot of categories, but. I would love to see them change that. If you don't get picked up by the team that drafted you, I think you should be eligible to go talk to other teams. Because I guarantee you a lot of other teams would want to take this guy if they had the choice or the chance. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky situation because on the one hand it's like a team can hold a player hostage. Like, hey, if you don't sign with us, then you can't get out of it. You're kind of like you're stuck in a sense. But also a player. Let's say a player doesn't want to play for like the Kansas City Royals. they could just sit there, refuse to sign their contract, and then boom, they're a free agent. They can go wherever they want. So it's really iffy. For the one point of view, I understand it. I understand the owner point of view. I understand the player point of view. It's really strange. And just briefly before we're up against it here, in terms of Rocker, I don't know what he's going to do. Would it make sense for him to get surgery, right now and just like rehab for a year? If he wants to pitch, I think it makes sense to go back to college. Vanderbilt's a big name, and now with the new rules, he can make money off his likeness. I mean, it's kind of dumb for him to go play in Japan or in like independent ball. I don't really see that kind of being good for his image and making a lot of money. I think NCAA might be the best bet. Maybe just sitting out a year and kind of resting and seeing what happens might be the best bet. But you know what? With all that being said, I think we're coming up on it here. It's time to wrap up our show. It's been a pleasure being with everyone here this evening. A special thanks to our Yankees beat reporter, Ryan Gregware. If you missed any part of tonight's show, you can check out the highlights of the entirety of the program on WFUV Sports YouTube page. The sports director at WFUV is Bobby Chaffardini. A thank you to our fearless producer and scoreboard updater, Mr. Alex Wolves. For Nick Feda, I am Michael Legan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. One on One is a production of WFUV Sports.